Hello and welcome to Ferguson Alliance webinar this afternoon, Impact, How to Discover It and Live It. One of my favorite quotes by Lewis Carroll is, if you don't know where you are going, any road will take you there. Obviously, without a shared vision of where you're headed, you can't really get to your destination. Examples of failed companies that did not innovate, such as Nokia, Kodak, BLOCKBUSTER, are plentiful. There's also some great examples of companies that are purpose-driven, such as Alaska Airlines, IBM, and CVS. My name is Rob Ferguson. I'm founder of Ferguson Alliance. Our firm's passion is to reverse a very troubling trend that we see with family businesses today. That is that the average lifespan of a family business has been declining over the past 5 decades. It currently sits at about 24 years, compared to where it was 5 decades ago, over 60 years. I'm here with my colleagues, David Schlossberg and Brandy Merrick. All three of us have worked multiple decades in family businesses as executives, shareholders, or board members. This particular webinar is a continuation of our Prosperity Plan series for family businesses. Today, we'll be talking about the impact a family business can have with its stakeholders. I intend to provide practical examples on the steps to take in discovering the impact your business can have for today and future generations. Our roadmap for today will begin with a quick review of the family business life cycle and our prosperity plan. If you'd like more information about that, we have an entire webinar devoted to it. You can find it on our website at ferguson-alliance.com. Today, however, we're going to focus on the second step of the prosperity plan, which is discovering your business impact on the lives and communities it serves. Brandy is going to be monitoring the chat bar. So if you have any questions, please type those into chat, and she'll interrupt me at the appropriate time. We'll also have plenty of time at the end of the formal presentation to have a discussion or address any questions that might have come up during the presentation. Family business prosperity, in our opinion, is different from what Webster tells us. It's what you, the business owner, declares. However a family chooses to define its business prosperity, it ought to be more than just status and money, don't you think? It should include the impact the organization will make on stakeholders it serves, such as their customers and employees and community. To reach the zone of prosperity, the impact of the business will define that legacy of the business and keep it grounded as it continues to grow and scale. You see, we believe that the more a family business can be prosperous, the surrounding community, its network, will also become prosperous. It affects the local communities, improve, it supports the schools, the city services. It essentially just makes the communities more vibrant and sustainable. Certainly, employees should have a better opportunity for their careers and income. Suppliers certainly should be growing as well. Many of those suppliers of family businesses are also family businesses, so they can continue to help their ethos. Increased donations with philanthropy to the community is something that's vitally important, particularly after these last 2 years of COVID lockdown. Philanthropy really suffered. Fortunately, we're beginning to see philanthropic efforts from family businesses continue to grow and expand this year. In other words, the more the family business is prosperous, everybody's going to win. So let's take a look at this business life cycle I mentioned in my opening comments. See, we believe, based on our experience and the research that we've done, that every organization has a natural and predictable life cycle. That life cycle is based on time and growth. By analyzing it, we can predict the problems an organization will face and determine how to best deal with them. So I spent a lot of my career in the agriculture sector, primarily in the horticulture end. So the way we've put this infographic together happens to be using a tree seedling. And so if you think about a tree seedling, when it's in its infancy stage, just like a business that's in a startup stage, that's its most challenging time. The risk cannot be higher than at a startup company. There's no cash flow, there's no management. You're still probably trying to produce a product, prove your product will work in the marketplace. So it's got high risk. It's only got two ways to go. It can grow and scale into a more adolescent stage, or unfortunately, a lot of startups have premature death. So that life cycle is very short. If fortunately you do make it to that adolescent stage, you're finding that you've got more opportunities than you can handle. You're making very reactive decisions. You struggle to delegate because you're very thin in management. As time goes and as the business grows, you know, we hope that it reaches what we call prime. Now, prime, you know, you're in that zone of prime when you've got more structure, you've got more discipline, you've got more rigor in your business, but it's in balance with that entrepreneurial spirit that you started off with in the infancy stage. So that's our opinion, is the optimum prime is when structure is in balance with flexibility. Middle-aged company is one that is very successful and is almost in a sustaining mode. You might notice that we have that at the peak of the cycle. We have prime just coming up to the peak. You see, what happens when a company reaches middle age, there's an attitude that begins to permeate through the organization of our business is doing well. You might hear things like, don't rock the boat. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. You do start seeing some paperwork or bureaucracy starting to come in place and starting to dampen innovation. And that should be a warning sign for these middle-aged companies, because that's a signal to reinvent yourself, to go back to that prime stage. Now, if that doesn't happen, the downhill side can be pretty slippery and it can be fast. You reach a senior stage. At the senior stage, this is where you're focused more internally, very financially driven. You're doing a lot of cost cutting, and you're more concerned about how you look in the market versus how you're performing. And then obviously it can get worse quickly. And we call this the twilight stage. It's, you know, obviously the stage of decay. There's a lot of recrimination happening, or witch hunts, cost reduction, petty jealousies, bureaucracy is very dominant, and you just can't cut enough cash to turn it around. And then eventually that business dies. So this is the life cycle that we're looking at. And our job is to help prevent a shortened life cycle. Now, there are some things, life events, that occur that are not predictable. Divorce or death, things of that such. But without proper succession planning, that business is going to probably not survive. There's also what we call the founder trap or the family trap. This is where that founder or the family has begun to be very prosperous. They quite haven't reached prime, but if they were to leave their business would lose value quickly, because obviously the business is very dependent. So our job is to come in and help get the founders out of that trap so they can reach prime. And then we do see this, unfortunately, from time to time. Another event is an unfulfilled owner. Lost enthusiasm. There's most likely there's a unsatisfied vision or mission that has occurred, or maybe profitability has been challenging, or there's been some external conditions that have had a negative impact on that current business. So again, we focus up here at the prime stage and the middle-age stage to help these business owners regain their excitement, regain their enthusiasm for their business. And we call this the prosperity zone. So we like to work with companies that are emerging from youthful companies to prime, or helping middle-aged companies rediscover their prime. We do sometimes work with our senior companies and twilight companies. I will tell you, it takes a lot of work, and it's going to take a real commitment from senior leadership to have the willingness to put the work in to rediscover their prime. So some signs you might notice that you're in the prime zone is that there's good alignment within your company. Your mission, your vision, and your purpose is well understood. You're growing. This is an exceptional time. I'm not saying it's perfect because it is chaotic. Because remember, you're dealing with a lot of dynamic nature of your business, internally and externally, and so you're constantly changing. So we like to call this the prosperity zone. The number one barrier to entering the prosperity is vision. Vision is crucial. In fact, we believe it is irreplaceable. No amount of execution or financial success can replace vision. You see, without a clear vision, everyone has to wait around and see what happens next. They have to get assignments from somebody. They have to essentially maybe guess, what does the owner want us to do? They've got to read the smoke signals or the tea leaves to see which way to go. It really does take the urgency out of a business. It creates a kind of a sense of slowness or a kind of wait and see-ness to everything. These barriers listed on this slide are just symptoms, and they're symptoms of not having a clearly stated, unifying, shared vision. So how do we get it there? How do we move a company from these issues so we can start working towards that zone of prosperity? Take a look at our model. This is our prosperity model, and we believe that a family business has a treasury, or we call it our house of prosperity. And that prosperity is ultimately achieved and maintained when the family business legacy is integrated with the business growth direction and its overall value that's created. So during our April 14th webinar, we discussed that the first step of defining that shared vision was the big decision. And that big decision was, will you be a family first business or a business first family? And we know that question is easy to ask, and it's also very difficult to answer. We discussed last April 14th that this process is, takes some time, because what we're trying to do is build consensus with the family members, the family owners. Certainly, it's a lot easier if there's just one family owner, but most of our cases have multiple family owners. And this process can take several weeks to even a month. So the second step is what we're focused on today, and that's the impact on the lives of stakeholders, customers, employees, community. Typically, there are three statements that fully articulate the desired impact. That's a purpose statement, vision statement, and mission statement. Many times we'll combine the purpose and vision statement. The other day I was doing a Google search on vision statements and purpose statements, and there was literally multiple millions of sites that I could go to and read about how to define a vision statement. So I wouldn't worry too much about the formal definition, the academic definition of what is the difference between purpose, vision, and mission. Instead, what I would be more worried about is the practicality, the realness of being able to declare the desired impact you want your business to have. So this is the process that we use. And let's look at purpose first. You see, we believe purpose articulates why you do what you do, why your organization exists, and why you serve a higher purpose. A purpose-driven company stands for and acts on something bigger than its products and services. It's not just a transactional business. Now, purpose can be an organizational strategy and a roadmap to remain competitive in the marketplace. And most business leaders know that. According to a 2019 PwC survey, 79% of business leaders that participate in the survey believe that the purpose was central to their success. In other words, having a stated purpose was critical to their success. Now, when their employees of those same businesses were surveyed, less than half the employees know what their organization stands for and what makes it different. So even though leaders know and understand intuitively they need to have a clear purpose, they have a very difficult time getting that communicated and aligned. Now, these two inspirational business leaders that I've listed up here on the slide, they know it. They get the fact that purpose acts as a North Star, and this North Star guides every decision that you make and you take as a company. So how do organizations pursue purpose successfully? It starts with articulating a clear, authentic, and long-term purpose, something that is really true today and can guide the organization in the future. So clear, what do we mean by clear? We mean it's easy to understand. It doesn't have a lot of consultees talk in it. It's not academic. It's real, it's relatable. That's what authentic is, that it's true. And long-term, it provides continuity between generations. Now, earlier when I started this presentation, I mentioned a few examples of purpose-driven companies. Let's take a look at some of those and see what sets them apart from those that do not have a clear purpose. So the first company I want to present to you, and I believe they're a real standout company, is Alaska Airlines. They really put measurable goals in place to make sure that their talk matches up with their actions. So at the heart of Alaska Airlines is this sense of stewardship for the people and places it serves. To bring that to life, the airline leadership sets measurable targets around three key pillars. Number one, making flying matter. Number two, invest for stronger communities. And third, fly greener. Now, how do they do that? Well, let's take a look at it. So we know that carbon dioxide emissions is a world problem, and it gets a lot of political debate. But what we're going to really talk about is what's this company, Alaska Airlines, doing about it? The global aviation industry produces around 2% of all human-induced carbon dioxide emissions. So to fly greener, what Alaska did is they put these little, you can see it on this picture here, these little wing tips. They're called split scimitar winglets. Well, I remember when I first saw that flying on Alaska Airlines, I thought, well, that's kind of odd looking, and what's that all about? It was explained, the captain actually explained it just when they rolled it out, that it was designed to help improve their efficiency. Well, I wasn't sure how much that would really help, but the company reports that in their first year of rolling it out, they saved 34,000 gallons of fuel. And that per year, well, that's about, at that time, that was about $20 million in savings. Can you imagine what the savings are here in 2022 with the price of fuel? It's got to be astronomical, at least double that. The other thing that Alaska does is that they use biojet fuels. I'm not sure if you're familiar with biojet fuels. I know I wasn't, but this is an alternative to the regular jet fuel that's used in the industry. This is fuel that's coming from the forest, the stumps, the branches, the pine needles. They make fuel out of that debris, and Alaska is using biojet fuels. So far, Alaska has reduced its emissions by more than 35% per passenger mile since 2004. That seems like a big deal to me. So they're very, very aggressive about this. The airline has stopped serving non-recyclable plastic straws and, the little sticks that you get in an olive or a lime. They don't use those anymore. You would think, I thought, that's probably not going to make that big of a difference. But they've reduced their in-flight waste by 70%. That was in 2021. Amazing. In 2018, flight attendants recycled almost 2,000 tons of cans, cups, paper, and other materials. You see, their purpose got their employees enrolled into this whole notion or whole idea. And me as a passenger, I started getting excited about it. So for 2 years running, Alaska Airlines has been ranked the most sustainable airline in North America. And they're really pushing the boundaries of how airlines can take care of the ecosystem just with their purpose. One of the executives at Alaska was quoted as saying, "We care about running a great airline and making a positive impact on the places and people we serve. When we are at our best, we do so in ways that strengthen our business and accelerate our growth." And the company has metrics to prove it. So it's not one for the other. this executive was saying, look, we can do both. We can live up to our purpose, having a positive impact on the environment, and grow our business. I think that's a very purposeful company. Let's look at this next example that I have. CVS Pharmacy. CVS Pharmacy is no longer CVS Pharmacy. It is CVS Health. And we'll talk about that. In 2014, CVS Pharmacy was the first U.S. drugstore chain that made a big decision. And that decision was to stop selling tobacco products. Now, why did they do this? Well, they realized that tobacco didn't align with its purpose of helping people on their path to better health. So what the CVS executives did, not only did they remove all tobacco products from the stores, it launched a program to help smokers quit. The move resulted in 95 million fewer cigarette packs sold and a 4% increase in nicotine patch purchases. That's pretty fascinating. So in the first year of this new strategy, CVS lost $2 billion in cigarette sales. $2 billion, that's with a B. Now, that's how committed these executives were to their purpose. However, its pharmacy sales jumped. It spiked. They're up 4%, and they continue to increase. So they were able to continue to increase their pharmacy sales by taking out the tobacco sales. So this allowed them to be an attractive target for Aetna. As we know, CVS merged with Aetna. It was about a $69–70 billion merger. And I think that happened because Aetna realized that CVS was committed to helping consumers become healthier. Now, I'm not going to say that CVS is perfect. It's not. We know that CVS still sells questionable products for our health, chemicals, sugary foods, snacks, alcohol. But let's just keep everything in perspective. As leaders, purpose is a journey. CVS is using their purpose statement as their North Star to help them guide difficult decisions and pick and choose different business strategies. You know, when they started this, the senior executives were talking about how important it was to take a cross-functional approach. So what they did before they launched, they brought in their finance team, merchandising, marketing, store operations, inventory management, and a cross-functional meeting, and they explained their purpose and their strategy and what it would mean to the company from a loss of sales perspective and what they hope would be from a gain of sales perspective, but most importantly, what it meant for their employees and their consumers to be healthier. And CVS wanted to be on that chart and really live up to CVS Health, not just CVS Pharmacy. They said, this one executive said, we need all our colleagues to connect with our purpose. That's so important. Employees in our stores and in our mailrooms and in finance, they should be able to see how their work is helping people on their path to better health. Fascinating purpose. Many of us know about Timberline Outdoor Apparel. They strive to link their purpose with the daily work of their employees across all business units. They're one of America's go-to outdoor apparel brands. The company encourages each employee to be what they call an earth keeper. Okay, so they kind of put this phrase together, and it's the Timberline's way of defining a vocabulary that encapsulates what their three core values are. 1, creating responsible products. 2, protecting the outdoors. And 3, serving communities around the world. That's what an earth keeper is. So this senior executive said, being an earth keeper is a whole philosophy and approach to how we do business. Employees don't have to check their values at the door when they come to work. Their values and beliefs are part of the work we do. In fact, what happens is their purpose attracts people who are already aligned to that purpose and want to come and work as an earth keeper. Interesting. Earth keeping starts with the people, and they put these earth keepers in their manufacturing and design. In 2007, the company accelerated its efforts to reduce waste and use fewer chemicals. And they were doing a lot of great things with some of their products, particularly their boots. What really stood out to me more than anything in researching Timberland was that their offshore manufacturers, the executives found out that their factory workers that were offshore lacked access to clean drinking. So what did the company executives do? They looked at their purpose and they said, we're going to partner with Planet Water Foundation. And they installed purified water towers in several of their worker communities. Not only did those efforts result in higher productivity and lower absenteeism, but it supported, the life of the community as a whole. That's a really purposeful company. IBM. IBM almost lost it during the PC war days. You might remember that. But IBM has really shifted, and it has really been dynamic in its approach, and it's a big company. So I'm amazed at how it's able to bob and weave. IBM's business purpose today is to make a connected world smarter. Their purpose is to make a connected world smarter. It harnesses that purpose to drive what they want is profitable innovation. And they do this through one of their programs called Smarter Planet. I really found this was fascinating. Smarter Planet is where IBM runs a series of challenges for smarter cities. Basically, what it does is it invites governments to submit really ugly environmental issues or thorny social or infrastructure challenges. They want a challenge. And then the company harnesses its expertise and its technology to create solutions to solve some of these difficult issues for cities. It's reached over 100 cities so far. Now, the research I did, it showed that Stockholm saw a 22% reduction in traffic congestion and a $92 million annual gain in city revenue after implementing some of these IBM Smarter City solutions. Malata reduced water consumption by 15% and energy use by 25%. So this isn't just a philanthropy project that IBM is doing. I want you to listen to these statistics. Revenue associated with Smarter City solutions increased 50%. And the Smarter Planet program as a whole, has driven more than $7 billion, that's with a B, in revenue. Those who are aware of the program are 2 to 3 times more likely to consider partnering with IBM. It's a purpose-driven company. So we don't have any multi-billion-dollar companies listening in on this webinar right now. We're family businesses. Most of us are very boutique and niche. Purpose-driven companies come in all shapes and sizes, and we can find them in industries all around the world. The one thing they have in common is a clear understanding of what they stand for, the why, and a willingness to take a stand and in ways that create long-term value for the company. It's no longer a question of if an organization should lead with purpose. It's now, how do you do that? Once you really can understand the why you exist, now you got to talk about the what. What is the future going to look like? So our second step in this is to craft a vision statement. We call it the big dream. What is it that you aspire to be? What are the results? What are the goals? What does the future look like 20 years from now? Define that as best you can. Define what success looks like in your future. Now, this vision statement should inspire everyone, all your stakeholders in your community. The one thing that we have to kind of push our CEOs to really do is to dream big enough. See, the idea is just because the business has a dream and aspiration doesn't mean everybody's dream is going to line up perfectly to that. But what you're going for is you're hoping that employees can dream their dream inside your dream. So now you have really great alignment. I have a great story about that. It's probably going to take us off tangent, but I'm going to tell it anyway, very quickly. So I was a general manager. This was many, many years ago, and we were having a celebration on our shipping dock. We just hit a major milestone in the company. So I had barbecue, celebration. It was great, great fun. And one of my employees walked up to me and said, Rob, I want to tell you thank you. Thank you for allowing my dream to come true. And I was, oh, you're welcome. But what did I do? I'm not sure exactly what you're thanking me for. He said, well, you see, I never got an education through high school. My family never got an education, my parents. My dream and my hope was always that my son would be able to get an education in the United States and get a college education as well. And I want to let you know that my son did graduate with honors, and he has his business degree, and he's starting his job in New York as a analyst for a investment banking firm. And he said, my dream wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for this company and this business. So you see, this employee had the ability to dream his dream inside of what our dream was collectively. For all, at that time, that facility had 250 employees. So what are some commonly known big dreams that you know of? The one that I like to refer to quite often is, John F. Kennedy's big vision, right? Land a moon on the moon before this decade is out, return them safely to Earth. Maybe you guys remember that. Some of you that are in my age group. President Kennedy understood the need to restore America's confidence. And he intended not merely to match the Soviets, but he wanted to surpass them. So on May 25th, 1961, he stood before Congress and he delivered a special message on urgent national needs. He asked for an additional $7 to $9 billion over the next 5 years so he could accelerate the space program, proclaiming this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before the decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. Well, he was very clear, very articulate. It was a very inspiring vision. Now, there was plenty of skeptics, believe me, around the world that this could actually happen. But within a year, within 12 months, I believe it was Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom became the first two Americans to travel into space within a year. And then space exploration covered the decade of the 60s, and the United States was on its way to the moon. I mean, we had the Gemini projects and then ultimately the Apollo projects. And on July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin realized President Kennedy's dream. So the dream was big enough. I'm going to tell another story about a client that I've had. It was a past client of mine. They were a longtime client. Have you ever heard the saying, you can't see the trees because the forest is in the way? Well, that's this client here. They were one of the largest CPG companies in Mexico. They're manufacturers and distributors of household cleaning products. Things like bleach, detergents, floor cleaning products, those kinds of things. When I started working with them more than 11 years ago, gosh, it's probably been 13 years ago, they had a small little business they acquired in the US. They had owned it for about 10 years. And before I started working with them, well, as a business advisor, I'm probing around, I'm doing my assessment. I asked the question, what's the purpose of this business unit you have in the United States? And it wasn't really clear. I think the consensus that the family gave me is, well, we wanted a business in the United States. Well, why? Well, our friends that are business owners, they also have businesses in the United States, or it helps bring us credibility that we're a global company. Well, as you can tell, that wasn't really an inspirational why. And so I asked them, what's your intentions with this business unit? I said, well, we don't know. They literally hadn't done anything with that business. It was very stagnant. And my point is you should either scale it or sell it, but don't let it continue to just stagnate. It's not fair to the employees. It's not fair to the customers and communities that it serves. So they agreed. They said, well, let's scale it. Let's go to work on it. And so they had some fits and starts with it. They tried to penetrate the huge, you can imagine the market is huge with consumer products for household cleaning products in the US, particularly in the general market. They really wanted to move into the general market. It wasn't too successful. Eventually, they focused in on selling their products to the Hispanic market, particularly to the female Mexican consumer, those folks that had just recently immigrated, and they started slowly growing their sales here in the US. But we were at one board meeting, we began to discuss, well, what are all the other assets that the family owns and the business owns? And what was discovered is that they have thousands of acres, literally thousands of acres of planted pine and palm trees. Why? I asked. Why do you have all of these? Well, we, the family, we believe that we want our products to be biodegradable. We want it to be natural. We don't want to have harmful chemicals. Now, this has been a long-time family belief, but it never came into the business. And I said, no kidding. And I also noticed when I went on several plant tours, they were a vertically integrated company, so they also manufactured their own plastic bottles. Well, they were recycling plastic for decades. They were one of the largest recyclers of plastic bottles. That was fascinating to me. That message wasn't getting communicated. And then I learned something about the fabric softener. I didn't know at the time, I now know today, that the main ingredient for fabric softeners comes from cow and sheep fat. Imagine that. Cow and sheep fat is what's on your towels that you put your face in. So when I learned that their reason for having palm and pine trees was to make their products and to use natural products, so instead of using cow fat, yeah, I guess that's natural, plus all the other chemicals that go in it, instead their softener is used with palm oil. So it was amazing to me that they had never leveraged their family passion, their family values into their business. Now, this family is also very philanthropic. They have built hospitals and schools, large recycling plants, farming, all of this. So my point for bringing this up is this was obvious to me, but it was overlooked by the family to incorporate those kind of core values from their family and attitudes into their business and broadcast it. So once being sustainable and helping use natural products, they came up with an entire line of natural, environmentally safe products, and their purpose statement is now to build a cleaner, more sustainable world. Well, since they've declared that, their revenues have increased more than 4 times. So you might be careful not to overlook the obvious in your business. So mission. Mission is the third element of impact. Your mission statement articulates how you're going to fulfill your purpose and vision. So we said that the why was your purpose and the what is the vision. Well, the mission is your how. I know that the distinction between purpose, vision, and mission is subtle, but nonetheless it's critical because each term is a distinct driver to the business impact on lives. The biggest reason to work through this with your organization, with your team, to collaborate on this, it's the journey. It's not necessarily the output, what you put on the pages, but it's the journey that you take your organization through. The decisions that you make around language will in itself bond your employees and help in the alignment process. It'll keep you inspired and your customers as well. It truly does clarify the impact and on your definition of prosperity. All right, another story. So I thought about maybe not including this. This is a current client. We're actually in the middle of working with this client. But I went ahead and decided to put it because I think it's very appropriate. It's mission focused. This current client, they're a civil engineering business. They've got a great reputation, second generation, long history of producing quality solutions for vehicle mobility. What that means to me is traffic. So the CEO and her executive leadership team are currently defining what their impact's going to be. And it's been a struggle to get it defined. One day I was talking recently with the CEO on a phone conversation, and I just asked her, well, what is your passion? And she said, well, healthy living. She said, I've always wanted to have a healthy lifestyle physically, but now with 2 years of COVID, mental health is very important to me. And she's spending her time and effort personally in mental health and physical health. So I further probed and I found out that she and her family are very active cyclists and hikers, but they live in a large city. So her personal interest around mental health and physical health did not seem to transfer to her in her business. So she also told me that she had just conducted an internal survey with her employees and learned that 82% of her employees were not dependent on cars to get to work. Now, certainly her business is in a major metropolitan area, and most of her employees are living in that area, but still, that was fascinating. So I started asking her, well, why can't your personal passion become your business passion? She said, really? I never thought of that. And I said, what would it look like? What could the world really look like in your area? Could your area end up being 82% not dependent on cars to get to work? Probably not. Could it be 40%, 20%, even 10% would be a significant change. So she became very excited about that possibility. In fact, she even said, hey, Rob, I've got goosebumps just thinking about the possibilities. So why am I bringing this up with mission? Because what it did is it immediately turned the light on for her. And she said, you know what? I only want to now do projects that connect communities through other modes of transportations other than vehicles. And she also said, what I'm no longer going to do, so I love this because mission should also tell you what you're not going to do, is I'm going to eliminate those projects that are not related. In other words, I'm going to eliminate these large highway expansion projects. And by the way, we don't really make any money on those, so it's not going to line up with our mission. Now, I don't know if all of this is going to actually end up being where she comes from, because this is about a 3-week-old conversation. But just to see the enlightenment that she had and the excitement that she had talking with her employees about this, and the definition of her mission was very fulfilling to me. So what I'd like to do, we have just a few minutes, is I'd like to launch this poll. Brandy's going to put this poll up, and I want you to answer the question, where are you with your impact? Do you have it fully articulated? Do you have a clear purpose and vision and mission? Everyone in your company knows about it? Or have you never considered it before? So just take a moment and choose which answer best describes your particular business and its definition of impact. And once you've chosen that, just click the button and push submit, and Brandy will share those results with us.
All right, so far it's been 50% have discussed some of these elements, 25% communicated some elements with employees, and 25% says they live their purpose, vision, and mission and provides focus. So we don't have anyone below that mid-range response. So it looks like there is some communication and some discussion. That seems to be the majority. Is that what you typically find when you're starting with clients? Where would you say?
Yeah, I think we've never really found any client, or at least I've never worked with a client that's had it fully articulated through the organization. So I'm really pleased to hear that 25% of the listeners believe that they've done that, and I just really tip my hat to you. But the 50% that have had some discussions or some consideration, I think that's great. I just would encourage you to continue to move that forward. And as leaders, sometimes we get impatient having these conversations because we want to kind of knock it out, take it off our to-do list. But these kinds of conversations provide the bonding and the enrollment into the ultimate idea. And you're going to end up having a more committed organization than if you don't take the journey.
Mm-hmm. Now, we do have one question regarding this. If you don't have a purpose, how do you start? Do you just make something up, or can you change it later, or do you have to stick with it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It does take a lot of reflection. And I think just in these two examples that I gave you about the why, I had to do some prompting with the owners. Back on the Consumer Products Good Company, the family values certainly had the passion of their family purpose. They just had not been able to transfer it over to their business. So it took a little bit of time for them to transfer it over. And once they saw that, but they started having conversations in their company, and they saw the enthusiasm that their employees were having around it, and it just kind of took on a life of its own. Similarly with the civil engineering group as well. I mean, we're starting to see this kind of unfold. I think you just have to ask the question, why do we exist? What is our purpose beyond making money? Particularly if you've made a decision in that first step that we talked about back on April 14th, are you a family first business or a business first family? If you're a business first family, you're serving the business needs first above the family. So then you have to have the conversation about how do we do that and why do we do that? So I think you just ask the question and you enroll that conversation with all of or as many of your employees and your customers and other stakeholders as you can. And that's how you get started. Now, the second part of that question is will it change? I believe it does. I believe it changes as the life cycle of the business changes. Think about it. When you're a startup company, your purpose is just to maybe make sure I can launch my product, prove my concept. By the time you become an adolescent company, you've now switched that purpose of, well, I just want to at least scale it. Sometimes we don't know what our purpose is going to be. And it does change. It does shift. I mean, think about the example I talked about with IBM. It has certainly shifted over time. And I'm going to talk in just a minute about what happens if you don't shift it. So good question. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
All right. So we just that question prompted me to go into this slide that the why for an infant startup is different from the why of a prime. Now, let's talk about what happens when businesses become complacent and they start relying on past successes to define their current state. That's where they're in that middle age or senior state on our life cycle. And believe me, that downhill side is a very slippery slope. Let's take a look at Kodak, Nokia, and BLOCKBUSTER. These and other organizations that didn't change with time are taken into what I call the abyss of not being relevant. They have either been acquired by other top rivals or they've just failed altogether. History keeps warning us against the perils of failed business strategies. However, it is for business leaders, those of you all listening on this call, to embrace any upcoming change we often ignore and to stand up for it. Stand up for what CVS did. They reduced their cigarette sales at $2 billion, a $2 billion reduction. That's a pretty big stand. So Nokia, you might remember Nokia in the 90s and 2000, it was the global leader in cell phones. It was the largest company that drastically failed because they didn't embrace this whole concept of software. They didn't do what other mobile companies started embracing. So other mobile companies started embracing how data, not voice, would be the future aspect of communication. Look at Blockbuster. 2004 was Blockbuster's peak. Interestingly, Blockbuster survived that transition from VHS to DVD, but Blockbuster's downfall began when Netflix started sending out videos via the mail. Cable was starting to run movies. Phone companies were starting to run movies. Remember this organization called Redbox? They started showing up and renting movies for, I don't know, $1 a night out of vending machines. So rather than being a leader, Blockbuster, they weren't. They were constantly chasing the industry. Their ego and their complacency got in their way. They became a middle-aged company, and they were doing this even when they were getting offers from Netflix CEO to buy them. I'll tell you what, I'd love to listen to Business Wars podcast. It's called Business Wars. It's a fascinating series. You want to know more about this Blockbuster versus Netflix? Listen to that. It's fascinating. Real quick, last one. Everybody knows about Kodak. Kodak was a jewel for 100 years. I mean, they could do no wrong. Kodak invented digital photography, and yet it was digital photography that was a nail in their coffin. They didn't change. They failed to innovate. So, in summary, your first step is to decide if you'll be a business first family or family first business. Next, you must go on this journey to discover the impact your business will have on the lives it serves. And you do this by defining your business purpose, the why, your vision, the what, and your mission, the focus. I want to leave you with this thought. Think of your purpose as the heart of your business enterprise, the vision as the brain, and the mission as your hands and feet. If you'd like some help making these changes you need to make to reach a more prosperous state in your business, contact one of us. You can book a call with one of our advisors to discuss your situation, request an information kit, whatever it takes, but reach out to us. We're here, we're available. We've got many more webinars planned. Watch your email for future invitations. We'd love to talk to you. Our contact information is here on the slide. And you can find us on LinkedIn. We're easy to get in touch with. I don't know if we have just a couple of minutes, Brandy. Are there any other questions that you have in the chat?
No questions yet, but I would encourage anyone to drop them in if they have them.
Well, I know we're getting close to an hour, and I want to be sensitive to everybody's time.
Oh, this person wants to know, can we describe our impact in your business? Can you describe your impact in your business?
Yeah, so Ferguson Alliance impact, I'm assuming is what the question is meaning. Yeah. So,
yes.
Well, we look back, we do measure, we measure our impact, and we look at how we impacted the overall value of our businesses. So we've been doing this for 12 years. And over that 12-year period, on average, we've increased our clients' overall value by more than $55 million. So we're pretty proud of that statistic. And so that's what we're all about, is helping increase the value of businesses, helping those businesses move from one generation to the next. And if in fact there isn't a generation that wants to take it over, then we help that founder exit their business with the highest and most appropriate value possible.
And I'll just add, being on both sides of the coin of being impacted by this business as a family member in a business prior to coming to Ferguson Alliance, was just the understanding and the care that was taken when working with us and helping us figure out our direction, because we really didn't know at the time when we started working with Ferguson what that direction was going to be. And so the impact was huge on me, in that I then discovered that I wanted to help other people that were in a similar situation to me figure out their path and their purpose.
Thank you, Brandy. I really do appreciate that. Yeah, from many listeners may not know, Brandy her family was actually, and still is, a client of mine until they recently decided to sell their business. So Brandy's been on this journey that we just talked about. So thank you very much. Well, thank you all for participating today. We do know it takes time out of your day, and your time is very valuable. And we're just so honored to have you joined us. Reach out to us if you have any further questions, and look forward to our future emails. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.